The signal in the stars. The aurora borealis danced across the Norwegian sky, but Dr. Rena Sullivan wasn't watching the lights. Her attention was fixed on the readings flooding her tablet screen, numbers that shouldn't exist in this remote valley. The wind howled through the ancient pines, carrying snowflakes that stuck to her thermal suit as she trudged deeper into the wilderness. "Control, are you seeing these energy signatures?" she spoke into her comm unit, adjusting the heavy pack on her shoulders. The response came through with a crackle of static. "Affirmative, Doctor. But we're getting interference. Whatever's out there is playing havoc with our systems." Rena checked her coordinates again. The Norwegian government had granted her team access to this restricted area after their satellites detected unusual electromagnetic disturbances 3 days ago. As the leading expert in xenoarchaeology, she'd seen her share of false alarms and hoaxes. But this was different. The signal pulsed with a pattern too precise to be natural, yet unlike anything in human databases. It spoke of intelligence, of purpose, and most intriguingly, of age. Carbon dating from preliminary scans suggested whatever lay buried in these mountains had been here for at least 4 centuries. A flash of blue light pierced the darkness ahead, causing her instruments to spike. Rena quickened her pace, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The valley narrowed into a ravine, its walls rising like ancient guardians on either side. The signal grew stronger with each step. "Dr. Sullivan, we're losing telemetry," Control's voice crackled. "Maybe we should wait for the full team." "There's no time," Rena cut in, knowing she was breaking protocol. "If these readings are correct, we're dealing with technology far beyond our current understanding. And it's active." The ravine opened into a small clearing, and Rena stopped dead in her tracks. There, half buried in centuries of ice and rock, was a structure that defied explanation. Its surface was smooth, almost organic, with spiraling patterns that seemed to shift in the aurora's light. But it was the gentle humming that made her skin prickle, a sound that seemed to bypass her ears and resonate directly in her bones. "Control, are you getting this?" Only static answered. She was on her own. Rena approached carefully, her instruments recording everything. The structure's surface wasn't metal or any material she recognized. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, except for thin lines of luminescence that pulsed with increasing frequency as she drew closer. A sudden surge of energy made her hair stand on end. The patterns on the structure's surface began to move, flowing like liquid starlight. Rena stepped back, her scientific curiosity warring with primal instinct. Then she heard it, not with her ears, but in her mind. A voice, ancient and desperate, speaking in a language she didn't understand but somehow comprehended. "Help trapped, they come." The ground beneath her feet trembled. Sections of the structure began to shift and separate, revealing a darkness deeper than the night sky. Rena's instruments screamed with readings off the scale. She should run, call for backup, follow any of the dozen protocols established for first contact scenarios. Instead, she took a step forward. The voice in her mind grew clearer. "Time runs short. The hunters draw near. Please." Rena activated her suit's recording systems and spoke clearly into her comm unit, hoping somehow the data would reach Control. "This is Dr. Rena Sullivan. I've made contact with what appears to be an alien structure, possibly a vessel. There are signs of intelligence, possibly a survivor. I'm going to attempt communication." She raised her hand toward the structure's surface. The luminescent patterns swirled around her fingers, warm despite the freezing air. "I'm here to help," she said aloud, hoping her intent would carry even if her words didn't. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Images flooded her mind, a civilization of beings composed of light and shadow, a terrible war among the stars, a desperate flight through space, and a crash landing on a primitive Earth. But most prominently, she saw them, the hunters. Dark, twisted forms that consumed light itself, pursuing their prey across galaxies. The structure's opening widened, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, pulsing light. Inside, suspended in a field of energy, was a figure that both was and wasn't there, a shape suggested by ripples in the air, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The stasis field fails, the voice whispered in her mind. For centuries of waiting, hoping someone would understand our warning. They followed us here, sleeping in the dark places between stars. Soon they will wake, and your world will become their hunting ground. Rena's scientific training warred with the impossible reality before her. Who are you? What do you need? The figure in the stasis field flickered. I am Nixus, last guardian of the Luminarch. And I need your help to save both our worlds. Before Rena could respond, a sound like tearing metal echoed through the valley. The aurora above twisted unnaturally, its light seeming to drain away into nothing. The voice in her mind turned urgent, fearful. They come. The hunters wake. Please, decide quickly. Rena Sullivan, who had spent her life searching for proof of alien intelligence, faced a choice that would change humanity's destiny forever. The rational, scientific part of her mind screamed that this was too fast, too much, too dangerous. But as darkness crept across the stars above, she made her decision. Echoes of memory. The stasis field collapsed in a cascade of light, and Nixus's form solidified before Rena's eyes. The alien being stood nearly 7 feet tall, their body a shifting tapestry of translucent crystal and flowing energy. Where a human would have skin, Nixus had layers of overlapping light that moved like silk in a breeze, containing hints of colors Rena had no names for. Your choice is made, Nixus's thoughts resonated in Rena's mind. But we have little time. The ground shook again, more violently this time. In the distance, something that wasn't quite thunder rolled across the valley. Rena's instruments had stopped working entirely, their screens dark and lifeless. The stasis chamber preserved me, but it also contained the beacon that would draw the Shadowborn, Nixus explained, moving with liquid grace despite centuries of imprisonment. They will emerge from their hibernation seeking sustenance. What exactly are they? Rena asked, following Nixus out of the chamber. The alien's light cast shifting shadows across the snow, making it look like the ground itself was breathing. Think of them as cosmic parasites. Nixus's thoughts carried images of worlds turned dark and lifeless. They feed on consciousness itself, draining not just life but the very potential for life. My people, the Luminarch, fought them for millennia across thousands of worlds. Another tremor rocked the valley. This time, Rena saw what caused it. On the ridge above, something moved in the darkness, something that seemed to be made of living shadow. The aurora's light bent around it unnaturally, as if being consumed. We need to move, Nixus urged. That is only a scout. The others will follow. They made their way down the ravine, Nixus's natural luminescence providing just enough light to navigate by. The alien moved with surprising stealth despite their size, and Rena found herself struggling to keep pace. Your people, Rena ventured, the Luminarch, what happened to them? Nixus's light dimmed slightly, their movements becoming more fluid, almost liquid with emotion. We were creators, shapers of light and energy. We seeded countless worlds with the potential for life, nurturing consciousness across the galaxy. The Shadowborn were drawn to our works like moths to flame. The war lasted generations. A high-pitched keening split the air, making Rena's teeth ache. Above them, more dark shapes moved against the stars. The aurora was fading, its magnificent colors draining away as if being siphoned from the sky. They're hunting us, Nixus observed grimly. Your technology, primitive though it may be, has a certain resonance they find appetizing. Rena thought of her dead instruments, of the static-filled calls to control. They can affect our electronics. They consume energy in all its forms. But consciousness, especially sophisticated consciousness, is their preferred sustenance. Your species, with its complex neural networks and electromagnetic technology, will draw them like beacon. They reached the valley floor, where Rena's research vehicle waited. Its electronics were dead, useless against whatever force the Shadowborn emanated. In the distance, she could see the lights of the research base going dark one by one. How do we stop them? Rena asked, her breath frosting in the increasingly cold air. Nixus turned to her, their crystalline form catching what little light remained. My ship contained weapons, defenses designed to combat them. But they were damaged in the crash. To repair them, I need access to your world's technology. A piercing shriek echoed across the valley, closer this time. Rena saw shapes moving in the darkness, flowing like oil across the snow. The temperature was dropping rapidly, frost forming on her suit's visor. The base, she decided. We have equipment there, power sources. Maybe we can. Her words were cut off by an explosion of darkness. One of the Shadowborn had descended from the ridge, its form a writhing mass of void-black tentacles and impossibly deep shadows. Where it touched the ground, ice formed instantly, spreading in fractal patterns. Nixus moved with blinding speed, placing themselves between Rena and the creature. The alien's body blazed with sudden intensity, forcing the Shadowborn back. But more were descending from the ridges, their forms blotting out the stars. Your mind, Nixus communicated urgently. Shield it as best you can. They will try to reach you, to taste your thoughts. Rena felt it then, a cold, probing sensation at the edges of her consciousness. It felt ancient and hungry, a predator that had hunted across the stars. She gritted her teeth, focusing on mathematical equations, on the periodic table, on anything concrete and ordered. Nixus's light pulsed in patterns too quick to follow. The nearest Shadowborn recoiled, its form rippling with what might have been pain. But there were more coming, and Rena could see Nixus's energy flagging after centuries in stasis. Run, Nixus commanded. Head for your base. I will hold them. Not without you, Rena shot back, surprising herself with her vehemence. We either both make it or neither does. Something like amusement colored Nixus's thoughts. Perhaps there is hope for your species after all. Their form shifted, becoming more concentrated, more focused. Stay close to my light. Their power is weakest where illumination is strongest. Together, they began moving toward the research base, Nixus's radiance creating a bubble of safety around them. The Shadowborn followed, their forms flowing across the landscape like living ink, but they kept their distance from Nixus's light. As they ran, Rena's mind raced with possibilities. The base had backup generators, experimental power sources, and prototype quantum computers. If Nixus's technology could interface with any of it, they might have a chance. But watching the darkness spread across her world, seeing the hungry void where the stars should be, Rena wondered if they were already too late. Between worlds. The research base emerged from the darkness like a ghost ship, its usual bright floodlights reduced to dim glows in the spreading darkness. Rena and Nixus approached the main entrance, where a small group of researchers huddled around emergency lanterns. Dr. Marcus Ward, Rena's second-in-command, stepped forward, his eyes widening at the sight of Nixus. Dr. Sullivan, what, he began, but Rena cut him off. No time for explanations. We need access to the quantum lab, now. And gather everyone inside. Those things out there, they're drawn to consciousness. The researchers didn't need much convincing. The writhing shadows pursuing them were explanation enough. They hurried inside, Nixus's light casting strange reflections off the steel walls. The base's backup generators hummed weakly, fighting against the energy-draining presence of the Shadowborn. Your quantum computers, Nixus communicated, their form pulsing with urgency. They operate on principles similar to our core technology. With modifications, we might be able to recreate the containment fields that once held the Shadowborn at bay. They reached the Quantum Lab, a state-of-the-art facility that had cost millions to build. Dr. Ward input his access code, and the reinforced doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, banks of experimental computers lined the walls, their cooling systems creating a constant background hum. The power requirements will be massive, Rena noted, already moving to the main control station. Even with the backup generators. A thunderous crash echoed through the base. The lights flickered, and screams erupted from the direction of the main entrance. Through the lab's windows, they could see darkness seeping under doors and through ventilation shafts. There inside, Dr. Ward whispered, his face pale in Nixus's glow. Nixus moved to the quantum computers, their crystalline hands hovering over the interfaces. Your technology is primitive, but there is potential. Dr. Sullivan, I need you to modify the quantum field generators to match these frequencies. Images and equations flooded Rena's mind, complex mathematical patterns that made her head spin. She forced herself to focus, her fingers flying over the controls as she adjusted the quantum fields. Ward, reroute all power to the lab, she ordered. Everything we've got. The shadows were getting closer. Researchers ran past the lab's windows, fleeing deeper into the base. One man wasn't fast enough, a tendril of darkness caught him, and Rena watched in horror as his body seemed to freeze from the inside out, his consciousness visibly draining away until only an empty shell remained. Work faster, Nixus urged, their own light fluctuating as they channeled energy into the computers. They grow stronger with each mind they consume. Rena's fingers were numb with cold, but she kept working. The quantum computers began to hum at a different frequency, their fields aligning with Nixus's energy patterns. Dr. Ward worked at another station, redirecting power from every system in the base. The lab doors burst open. A researcher stumbled in, her eyes wide with terror. They're everywhere. The shadows, her words cut off as darkness flooded the room behind her. Nixus spun, their body blazing with sudden intensity. The darkness recoiled, but more poured in from every direction. The temperature plummeted, frost forming on every surface. The containment field, Nixus communicated urgently. It's almost ready, but what? It needs a focal point. A consciousness strong enough to direct it. Nixus's form flickered. Mine. Rena's heart stopped as she understood. You'll be trapped with them. I have been a guardian for centuries. It is my purpose. No. Rena's hand shot out, grabbing what passed for Nixus's arm. The sensation was like touching warm light itself. There has to be another way. The Shadowborn pressed closer, their hunger a palpable force. Dr. Ward worked frantically at his station, but his movements were slowing as the cold seeped into his bones. The researcher who had run in lay crumpled by the door, her body already turning to ice. Nixus's thoughts touched Rena's mind, gentle but firm. Your species has such potential. Such brightness. I will not let them extinguish it. Before Rena could protest further, Nixus moved to the center of the lab. Their crystalline form began to shift, expanding and brightening until they were a pillar of pure light. The quantum computers screamed as power surged through them. Rena Sullivan, Nixus's thoughts came one last time. Remember us. Remember that there is light in the darkness between stars. The pillar of light exploded outward. Rena felt herself being thrown back, her world dissolving into brilliant white. The Shadowborn shrieked, not in triumph this time, but in fear. The containment field manifested as a web of energy, trapping both Nixus and the dark creatures in a prison of light. When Rena's vision cleared, the lab was in ruins. The quantum computers sparked and smoked, their circuits burned out. Dr. Ward lay unconscious but alive near his station. And in the center of the room, a sphere of swirling energy hung suspended in the air, containing writhing shadows and dancing light locked in eternal combat. Outside, the aurora returned to the sky, its colors more brilliant than before. But Rena barely noticed. She approached the containment field, her hand reaching out but stopping just short of its surface. Inside, she thought she could see Nixus's form, still fighting, still guarding, still holding the line between light and darkness. "I'll find a way," she whispered. "I promise." In response, the light within the field pulsed once, like a distant star sending its message across the vast depths of space. The price of freedom. 3 months after the incident at the Norwegian research base, Rena stood before a panel of stern-faced government officials in a windowless room deep beneath Oslo. The containment sphere hummed quietly in its reinforced chamber behind her, its swirling energies casting shifting patterns across the walls. "Dr. Sullivan, you're asking us to approve an extremely dangerous operation," General Thora Eriksson said, her voice sharp as winter frost. "Based on theories that, frankly, sound more like science fiction than science." Rena kept her voice steady. "Everything about this situation is beyond our previous understanding of science. But the data doesn't lie." She gestured to the holographic displays showing her research. "The containment field is weakening. Without Nixus's conscious effort to maintain it, the Shadowborn will eventually break free." Dr. Ward, still bearing scars from that night, spoke up from his seat beside her. "Our measurements show increasing fluctuations in the quantum matrix. We estimate 3 months, maybe 4, before total failure." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the containment field. Rena watched the officials exchange glances, seeing the fear behind their diplomatic masks. They had all read the reports, seen the footage of what happened to those touched by the Shadowborn. "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Dr. Emilia Novak, the quantum physics expert they had brought in to evaluate Rena's work. Rena took a deep breath. "Using Nixus's crashed ship, we've managed to decode portions of their technology. The Luminarch understood consciousness in ways we're only beginning to grasp. They developed methods to transfer and preserve mental energy across vast distances." She pulled up another display, showing complex energy patterns. "What we're seeing in the containment field isn't just a prison, it's a battlefield. Nixus is actively fighting, preventing the Shadowborn from gathering enough strength to break free. But they're weakening. They need help." "You want to go in there," General Eriksson stated flatly. "Into the field itself." "Not physically," Rena corrected. "But yes, I believe we can use modified versions of Luminarch technology to project my consciousness into the field. I can help Nixus reinforce the containment while we work on a more permanent solution." "And if you fail?" Dr. Novak asked quietly. "If the Shadowborn consume your consciousness instead?" Rena met her gaze steadily. "Then humanity loses nothing it wouldn't lose anyway when they break free. But if it works, we gain time and knowledge we desperately need." The panel deliberated for hours, but in the end, they had little choice. The alternatives, trying to destroy the containment field or waiting for it to fail, were too risky. 1 week later, Rena found herself in a specially constructed chamber, surrounded by a mixture of human and salvaged Luminarch technology. Dr. Ward supervised the final preparations, his hand steady despite his obvious concern. "The neural interface is stable," he reported. "Power levels optimal." "But Rena..." He hesitated. "We don't know what it's like in there. Time, space, the normal rules might not apply." "I know," she said softly, settling into the modified containment chair. Its surface was covered in circuits that mimicked Luminarch crystalline patterns. "But I made a promise." The machinery hummed to life around her. Through the reinforced window, she could see the containment sphere, its swirling energies more chaotic than ever. Somewhere inside, Nixus was fighting, holding back the darkness alone. "Neural sync initiating, Dr. Ward's voice came through speakers. "Remember, at the first sign of trouble, we'll pull you out." Rena closed her eyes as the interface activated. Her consciousness began to feel light, disconnected from her physical form. The last thing she heard was Dr. Ward counting down. Then she was falling through light and shadow. The space inside the containment field defied description. It was like being inside a storm made of pure energy, where thoughts had weight and memories took physical form. Darkness swirled around her, trying to reach her, but her consciousness was protected by a shield of modified luminarch energy. "Nixus," she called out, not with her voice but with her mind. "I'm here." The energies shifted, and suddenly Nixus was there, or rather, their consciousness was. Their form was different here, more abstract, a complex pattern of light and thought. But Rena would have recognized them anywhere. Rena Sullivan, Nixus's thoughts touched hers. "You should not have come. It is too dangerous." "I promised I'd find a way," she responded. "And I'm not leaving you to fight alone." Around them, the Shadowborn pressed closer, their presence like holes in reality itself. But together, Rena and Nixus pushed them back, their combined consciousness strengthening the walls of their prison. "Your mind," Nixus observed with something like wonder. "It resonates with our technology, adapts to it. How is this possible?" Before Rena could respond, a surge of darkness swept toward them. She felt Nixus's consciousness envelop hers protectively, their energies merging. In that moment of connection, she understood. The images flooded her mind, the Luminarch, eons ago, seeding worlds with the potential for life. Earth had been one of those worlds. Humanity carried within their DNA the echo of Luminarch engineering, dormant but present. "We are connected," Nixus communicated. "We always have been." Together, they pushed back the darkness, their combined strength creating patterns of light that made the Shadowborn recoil. But Rena could feel the strain on both of them, the enormous energy required to maintain the containment. "We need a permanent solution," she thought. "This can't last forever." "No," Nixus agreed. "But now that you are here, now that we understand the connection, perhaps we can find one together." In the physical world, alarms began to sound as energy readings spiked off the charts. Dr. Ward and his team watched in amazement as new patterns formed in the containment field, human and Luminarch consciousness working in harmony. The battle was far from over. But for the first time since that night in the Norwegian wilderness, there was hope. Dawn's promise. 2 weeks had passed since Rena first entered the containment field. In the physical world, her body remained in the modified chair, sustained by medical equipment while her consciousness merged with Nixus's in their eternal battle. Dr. Ward hadn't left the facility, monitoring the readings that grew more extraordinary with each passing day. Inside the field, time had no meaning. Rena and Nixus existed in a dance of light and energy, their combined consciousness holding the Shadowborn at bay while they searched through centuries of Luminarch knowledge for a solution. There, Nixus's thoughts intertwined with Rena's. "Do you see it?" Together, they examined a pattern in the quantum fabric of their prison, a frequency that made the Shadowborn shrink away, a resonance that weakened their very essence. It was something neither of them could have discovered alone, born from the unique merger of human intuition and Luminarch wisdom. The containment field, Rena realized. "We've been using it wrong. It's not supposed to be a prison." "No," Nixus agreed. "It was designed as a transformation chamber. The Luminarch used such fields to evolve consciousness itself. Their shared understanding crystallized into a plan. But the risk was enormous. In the physical world, Dr. Ward noticed the readings changing and activated the emergency comm system. "Rena? The energy patterns are shifting. What's happening in there?" Through their neural interface, Rena managed to respond. "We found a way, Marcus. But I need you to trust me. Divert all power to the containment field, everything we've got. That could overload the entire system, he protested. We don't know what. Please, she interrupted. It's our only chance. There was a long pause before Dr. Ward's voice returned. Done. Whatever you're going to do, do it now. Inside the field, Rena and Nixus began to move in perfect synchronization. Their combined consciousness reached out, not to fight the Shadowborn, but to embrace them. The dark entities recoiled at first, then pressed forward, hungry for the offered energy. Now! Nixus commanded. They released their carefully constructed quantum frequency, not a weapon, but a key. The containment field filled with impossible colors as ancient Luminarch technology merged with human innovation. The Shadowborn, drawn in by their hunger, found themselves caught in a transformation they couldn't escape. Pain lanced through Rena's consciousness as the energy drain threatened to overwhelm them both. But she held on, her mind locked with Nixus's, their shared strength keeping the process going as the Shadowborn began to change. In the chamber outside, alarms blared as power systems overloaded. Dr. Ward and his team watched in awe as the containment field blazed with light bright enough to rival the sun. Inside, the darkness was becoming something else. What we are, Nixus shared through their connection, what we can become, it was never about light versus darkness. It was about choice. About transformation. Rena understood. The Shadowborn had been locked in their own evolutionary dead end, consumed by eternal hunger. The containment field wasn't just holding them, it was offering them a chance to change. The process reached its crescendo. In that moment of ultimate transformation, Rena felt everything, the echo of Luminarch engineering in her own DNA, the ancient knowledge in Nixus's consciousness, and the newfound awareness awakening in the transformed Shadowborn. The light became blinding, then suddenly winked out. When Rena opened her physical eyes, she was back in her body, the neural interface smoking slightly. Dr. Ward helped her sit up, his face a mask of concern and wonder. The containment field, she croaked. Did it? See for yourself, he said softly. Where the swirling sphere of darkness and light had been, figures now stood, translucent beings of crystal and shadow, neither Luminarch nor Shadowborn, but something entirely new. And among them, Nixus, their form also transformed by the merger of energies. The hunger is gone, Nixus spoke, their voice audible now rather than telepathic. We are, changed. The transformed beings moved with liquid grace, their forms capturing both light and shadow in beautiful patterns. The scientists and officials who had gathered to witness the event stood in speechless awe. What happens now? Dr. Ward asked. Rena stood shakily, moving closer to Nixus and their transformed kin. Now we learn from each other. The Luminarch seeded Earth with potential, but humanity developed in its own unique way. And the Shadowborn? She smiled. They've been given a new chance at evolution. There are more of them out there, Nixus added. More of my people too, scattered across the stars. They need to know that change is possible. Rena felt the residual connection between them, weaker now but still present. Then we'll find them together. After all, Earth could use some allies out there in the darkness between stars. Nixus extended a crystalline hand, and Rena took it without hesitation. Where their fingers met, light and shadow danced together, a promise of things to come. Above the facility, the aurora borealis painted the sky in celebration, its colors more vibrant than ever before. Humanity's first steps into a larger universe hadn't come through conquest or conflict, but through understanding and transformation. The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if welcoming a new species to their eternal dance. The darkness between them was no longer empty. It was full of possibility.